All right, friends, we are at the half hour, so we can go ahead and get started. For those of you just joining in, there is a chat feature available. It looks like everybody today so far is calling or logging in via their computer and not by phone. If I see some phone people jump on, I'll give a separate set of instructions. Welcome to the Stage Managers Association discussion on Excel for Stage Managers. I'm Erin Joy Swank. I am your digital moderator for this. So for now, everyone is muted except for Jonathan and myself. And if you could keep yours muted for now, and any questions you have, pop over to that chat feature, which if you hover at the bottom, you should be able to get to that chat feature. And I will moderate in between. And meanwhile, we will hand this over to, if I can get to there's Jonathan's information. Jonathan, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I certainly will. Hi, I'm Jonathan. Goodness, my voice is going to go now. Good. I'm Jonathan Allsup. I currently am the production manager at Paramount Theater in Aurora, Illinois. I started that about 3 years ago after 15 years as a freelance stage manager, mostly in Colorado. But a little bit in Illinois as well. If you can see us in the panel above, I'm joined by Megan Allsup, who is my wife and also is a freelance equity stage manager, a successful one in Denver and now in Chicago as well. So yeah, thanks so much for inviting us to talk a little bit about how we use Excel. Appreciate that. And just kind of paging through who's all joined us here. And it's really great to have such a great turnout. Seeing some titans of the stage management industry joining us makes me a little bit nervous, but I'm sure I'll get over that soon enough, and I hope we have a chance to connect. Please also, I know this is such a weird format. I'm so used to doing workshops and things where I'm in the room with people and can get some feedback and see heads nodding and things like that. So unfortunately, I can't see all of you at the same time, but I hope you get something out of today. And I also hope that there's a way that we can also take some questions as we go along. I've got my chat window open. I also know Erin is moderating the conversation as well. Some disclaimers and qualifiers before I start sharing my screen and showing some examples. The first disclaimer and qualifier is that our wonderful guard dog, Yvette, is on the floor here. However, should the mail be delivered or FedEx drop by or even someone ride by on a bicycle, she may have a few things to input. So please pardon any barking. Second qualifier is that this is my experience, right? And Megan's going to chime in a little bit too, but there's 100 different ways to do paperwork, right? There's 150 more bad ways to do it, but there's 100 good ways to do it. And so this is just my experience. Some of what I'm going to show you today is, or most of what I'm going to show you today rather, is my own or Megan's paperwork. There's an occasional thing that I thought was worth sharing that does belong to other people, with their permission, of course. I'm sharing it. I think I've redacted all phone numbers and emails and all of that business, so we don't have to worry about other people's private information getting out there. Yeah, so this is my own experience. The third qualifier, which I think might go without saying, but I also think in these uncertain times is worth saying, is that what an unusual, uncertain circumstances that allow us all to be gathered here, learning new skills. And I know that, you know, being a very right-brained type A person myself, I know that it's very difficult to not know what's in the next week, the next 2 weeks, the next 4 weeks, perhaps even longer, next 6 weeks, months. I just want to share with you, just if you'll permit me 30 seconds of walking down this path of that. What I'm finding is these little silver linings in this, and some of it's coming in the small little interactions that Megan and I get to have because we're literally at home together all day, every day for the last week. And we have gone weeks and weeks of our career without seeing each other, passing ships in the night, living in different cities. And so there's a little silver lining there. There's little silver linings in connecting with other people that we, have meant to and intended to for years. And wouldn't it be great to connect? And we are diligently every day at 7 p.m. FaceTiming with some friends in Denver or Texas or across the country. We had already committed to a year of learning and service for us, committing to kind of giving back and committing to learning new skills. And so there's a little silver lining in things like this, where we're able to kind of hone some of our skills to become better at what we do, but more importantly, to become better humans to each other and to those around us. So I don't know if that is meaningful to anyone else except for me, and I think saying it out loud has been a bit of self-therapy, but finding those little silver linings, I think, will be what gets many of us through this uncertainty, this time when type A people want to go and do and organize. And there's some of that to be done, but there's also just some of sitting and reflecting and learning and growing, which I think can be helpful. So kind of to the task at hand, zooming in, if you will, I'll start sharing my screen here in a second and show you some things. But, oh, look, we can all see each other. Hi, Matt McMullen. There's so many people here. This is so, Barbara Butts, David LaRocca. Oh my God. Okay, now I'm really nervous. I wish I hadn't seen all of you.
Sorry.
So again, just a kind of a disclaimer, this is not one way to do it. This is just several ways that we have discovered. There will be some tips and tricks, some little shorthand things, but I thought what might be interesting, let me share my screen so I can stop seeing myself, is to just, I did a quick little, I don't know if you can all see this or not, if it just looks blurry to you, but a quick little pulling up of lots of different kinds of documents that we've created on Excel here, there, or everywhere. And I'll just kind of zoom in on a couple here, starting with ones that will seem familiar, right? So like this is a character scene breakdown, a character breakdown, a French scene chart, whatever you want to call it, right? And this is a simple thing that can be done in Excel. You can do it in other things as well. I think many people that I know and have worked with do this in Excel. And this is an example of a paperwork that Megan put together for a production of Tartuffe that she did in Denver. And this is a real simple one, right? You can add colors, you can add borders and lines and that kind of thing. And I think this is a good example of, a lot of people sometimes say like, oh, well, I do that, but I do it in tables in Words, or I do that, but I do it in, I don't know, Illustrator, or, pick your poison. I think like this is a prime example of one of the many reasons why I gravitate towards Excel. And here's just a short example for those who may just kind of be starting out new with this. I saw in the chat earlier, we've got some high schoolers, we've got some college students. If you're kind of, still learning and figuring out what the tools are, I would say that I use Excel when, rather than Word for me is kind of my second go-to, but I use Excel when I need something that's sortable. Or when I need something that I need to calculate, I need something to be, automatically calculating in one way or another, something that I can easily copy a line or a row and paste it somewhere else, or even just a cell if I'm moving things around. And this is a prime example of that, right? We get a character scene breakdown. Maybe it's for a new play, maybe it's for a musical that has a lot of ensemble members, and day two, the director says, oh, well, actually, this townsperson number 3 is now played by this person. Real quick to copy and paste that cell, those kind of things. I think anything also that and we'll see some examples of this, where you need to have some extended info beyond what you want printed. So like sometimes I will have rows or columns that go out further than the printable section, than the set to print area. And that allows me to track things on the side that are relevant, but may not go out when I PDF the version. Or even if I'm sending it as an Excel, I can hide or unhide cells or rows. So I can, sometimes in a character scene breakdown, I might have here as an example, actor, character, and then another row that is understudy. So I can easily reference in the character scene breakdown who the understudy is. but that can be confusing for people and may not be applicable. And it's a, you know, printable space that I don't want printed, so I can hide that. So if I've got extended info to hide or move. If I'm tracking 2 or more variables, right, things that are going to change either on the X or Y axis, and then even perhaps even further deeper than that, things that will change throughout the process, I can do that fairly quickly on here. Sorting, filtering, all of those kind of things where if I need to go search for a piece or filter a row of things like that. And then anything where perhaps I'm making a form. So I'm just going to kind of jump around here a little bit and get a couple more examples of some of that. For instance, maybe we can just make sure that I did this right. Erin, are you seeing a production punch list? Excellent, great. So this is a production punch list. This is something that I use as a production manager. Matt, other people that have worked at Paramount Theater, you're not going to recognize this. This is a new thing that we're starting in our departments over the last show or two. But this is a prime example of way that as a production manager, I use Excel, which may be applicable to some stage managers. And this has a lot of fancy bells and whistles in it. For instance, I can sort on this column for anything that is just just medium rather is what I selected. So it doesn't display the information that has in this column things that are high, low, medium, whichever one I select. So I can just go and see what the high priority items are.
And Jonathan, just to be clear, this is by using the filter function first, right? So some people don't know about that, I think.
Yeah, so this is probably another disclaimer I should have started with. I'm running Excel on a Mac. Excel for PC, slightly different. Google Sheets, also somewhat slightly different. And then I guess, and I did write this one down, I forgot to say it, but you know, I have listed on my resume self-proclaimed Excel genius, which just basically means that I have a conversation starter on my resume for who is ever reading it. Because I can, just like anyone else, Google or YouTube how to do anything on Excel. In fact, sometimes my boss will say, hey, Jonathan, you know Excel really well. How do I? And then I'll be like, well, I don't know. Let me go find out. And I go to Google or YouTube, right? So like anyone can be a self-proclaimed Excel genius. It really just gives me a conversation starter. So if what I'm saying, if how I'm showing you doesn't quite line up with your particular platform, with your particular version, it's so easy to go and figure out how to make that happen. So it's a little bit clunky here just because I've got all of this Zoom stuff in the way, but basically anything that you're going to be looking for in the drop-down menus, either on the Excel itself, or if you're on a Mac, then there's the other drop-down menus for insert and review, data, tools, all of that stuff. So, sorry, one second. Things popping up. There we go. And so, yeah, that's using the filter feature. And you can do that a couple different ways. I would recommend figuring out on your particular platform how to insert that. But what's really nice on the filter feature then is I can just easily go in and do a drop-down menu and change this thing to high. I can change it to low. I can manipulate any of the choices that I have within that particular column. The other thing that I've done on this particular thing, which is a fun bell and whistle, is where I have the status. So I can drop these down and I can change this to 100% status, and it changes across the row there. I literally just pointed with my finger as if you all could see that. I just wanted to point out how silly I am. But you can change here, I'll show you with my cursor, how that whole line now went green and got struck through. But if I go back to 50%, it goes back to there. That's probably my favorite feature in Excel, which is conditional formatting. That was weird. Somehow I got muted. Can you hear me again? Yeah, great.
I was trying to talk and I muted you instead of pushing mine on because you're right below me. That was
Oh,
my fault.
no problem.
My question was, how do you do that? How do you set it up to do the 100%?
Exactly. So there's again, this is probably the thing that's the most different amongst different versions of Excel. But there's, on mine here, you see a little drop down that says conditional formatting. So you select your cell and you can go to conditional formatting. And there's different ways to do this, but basically you want to find something that's akin to rules or manage rules. And I've got all of these different things set up for this particular cell. So I've got a data bar set up so that if I were to click on this and say edit the rule, you'll see that there's a style of conditional formatting called data bar. And if the value is between 0 and 1, it will make the bar green to a certain extent based on what the percentage is. There also is, where's the one I want? Oh, here we go. So there's a formula one, right? And so on this drop down, you'll want to select classic, which is if you have an older version of Excel, I think about the only option that you have, but classic. And then use a formula to determine which cells to format. So basically I have selected that if I5, so I5 is the particular cell that I have selected, is equal to 100%, then it will custom format, and you can go in there and select some pre-selected ones or go to custom format. And I have it currently and you can change all kinds of different things, right? Like the fill I have as no color, the border I have as don't change anything, but the font I have to select the color green and to strike through. So if that cell equals 100%, then I want it to color the text green and I want it to strike through. You can change so many things about it in conditional formatting, anything from the number type, the font, the color, the strike through, the border, the fill, all of those different things are options for how you can change it so that if you make that true, so if I can make this 100%, it will, and I basically selected it for every cell along this row, and you can do it by row, you don't have to do it cell by cell, and change that to strike that out. This is a shorthand at our theater for that something is done and new. It's changed, it's new, it's green, it's struck through, it's done. So this helps us kind of track those kind of things. So this particular one has lots of different options, right? So like it can be, what's one? Discuss with designer. Nope, that's not one. Discuss in meeting is one though. Come on. Discuss with meeting. It changes it all to yellow. That informs us in production management and also the TD in this particular case that's something to discuss in the meeting. Don't forget to bring that up, right? So that's the same thing, just a different set of selection of what to change it to. So I basically told this row through conditional formatting and manage rules to anytime this says discuss at meeting to make the whole row be yellow. There's a lot of layers to that kind of, this is my favorite tool, so I'm kind of delved in more to this, but there's a lot of layers to that, right? Like you can say, like if you go into manage rules, you can say like stop if true. So if you want this to be the primary one that it looks for, and if it sees that to not look at anything else, then you can hit stop if true. It won't look at the other ones. I don't have stop if true until the bottom one because that's the order I want them in. That's the priority I have. I may have gone down a rabbit hole here that is longer than I intended on my favorite part of Excel. So let me try to get back on track here. So filter and conditional formatting are the two that I have. Here's one that actually I think might be applicable to more stage managers. So in this particular cell, I have updated, and I have in cell H3 here, and if you can see my formula bar, equals all capitals today, open parentheses, close parentheses. That means that anytime I open this document, it will be updated today. We put rev dates on all sorts of things. There are examples, I can certainly think of 100 off the top of my head, where I don't want it to update every time I open it. I only want it to update every time I change something. But this kind of document, I do want to update every time I open it because I want it to be today's version. So that will, tomorrow when I open it, that will say Wednesday, March 25th, 2020. So you can find little fun formulas like that that help with updating things day to day. Kind of back to broad view. There we go. So I think calendars might be the next place to go. And there's 100 different ways to do calendars. I'm not saying that I have the best way, and amongst the mazillion things I have open right now, I'm trying to see like what the best calendar might be. Here's a good example, and this is a pretty in-depth calendar. And again, this is something for production management, not that I use for stage management, but it has some applicable tools, I think, right? So in this particular calendar, this is for Secret of My Success, the play that we just closed early at Paramount Theater. I'm sure everyone can relate. And this one has some applicable tools if you're setting up a calendar.
Can you maybe zoom in a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So for instance here, if it stops zooming, you will see that on this particular calendar, I can change this date in this cell that I'm in right now, February 2nd, and it will change the whole calendar for me. So let's say that this date is actually today's date. Let's see if I do this right. Yeah, so I change it to today's date, and every date on the rest of the calendar changed, simply because of a feature which many of you probably know about, which is I can just in this cell say equals the cell before equals A4 plus 1. Excel can do date math, essentially, right? So, and then I can just copy that formula into the next cell. Hey, look at the cell before it. Hey, look at the cell before it, right? And then when I get to Sunday, I have to say, hey, look at the cell up here. I want you to look at Saturday. Tell me what that one is, plus 1, right? So I can now update these calendars for the next show so quick with the dates, right? That's something that, you know, you can copy and paste and you can input and make a mistake, you know, why bother with all that? So just a simple formula of it knowing to change the date. Now, all of them do have to be formatted as dates, right? And just a quick little thing there, like you can select any cell and go to format and go to cells, or there's a couple different ways to go there. And you want to select the way that you want the date to display. So I have this as a custom date here, but I can change it to any sort of date, right? Like I could ask it to display the week, the month, the date, and the year. I can ask it to do it in just numeric format. I can do it in the format that I have it in. I can do it in all sorts of different kinds of formats. And it will change just that particular cell, maybe if my, well, did I already have it selected that one?
Yeah, I think so.
Great. Thanks for correcting me in front of 57 people. Let's see here. Actually, that's great. Please do keep doing it. But yeah, there you go. So you can change it to be 3/25/20 if you're a person that likes to have the year on there. Although, pro tip, don't just sign anything with 20 because that's easily changeable by other people if you're writing it in pencil to be 2018 or backdated, so 2020. That one's for free.
We did have a question. This was actually earlier when you were doing your always updating of your cell up in the corner of the previous one. You could set that to be to the time as well too, right? Not just the date.
Yeah, it's equal time, open parentheses, close parentheses, I think. It's been a while since I've done that one. I don't know, let's try it. No, it doesn't like that. It's something very close to that. No, time value. Oh yeah, it wants me to. Yeah, time is a weird one that you might have to go YouTube. So much for Excel genius. But it's something like that. And I can show you some time things here as well. because this is something that we in production management in my department use to track who's in rehearsal when and how many hours we're getting per week. So I actually do have a formula set up here where it is tracking, let's say Rose here, my boss. So this formula that I'm in right now is equals F12 minus E12. So this is looking over here at Rose's Monday, and it is taking F12 minus E12. There's nothing in there right now. And it is calculating how many hours she's working that day. So let's pick a day that actually has something in it, right? So yeah, here we go. So this is I12 minus H12. So it's looking at 8 p.m. minus 10 a.m. and it is calculating that is 10 hours for her that day. What gets tricky is when you cross midnight, right? And so there's a couple different ways around that. Here you can see in this cell, Wednesday, she's working from 11 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. So actually 13 and a half hours. And there's a quick workaround, which is that you can input any date, right? I can put in February 5th, 2020, 11 a.m. And then I can make this February 6th at 12:30 a.m. And as long as the dates are in there, it understands. It goes, oh, you crossed a day, that's 13 and a half hours. There's also a thing called mod, M-O-D, where it will modify the time into basically 24-hour time, and then will understand that you're wanting to change the date. It requires more formulas. And I don't do it that way because, like I said, I'm kind of self-taught. I kind of do the guerrilla warfare Excel geniusing. When I need something, I figure out how to do it. And this was kind of the workaround that I found. So I'm sure everyone online is rolling their eyes like, yeah, it's equals mod parentheses out, you know, like you guys probably know how to do it, but it can be done is the thing. And this is just the way that at 2 in the morning when I was trying to put this together, this is the way that I came up with. And there's also, and I know it now, it's in future versions of this, where the mod formula is. So you can look that up. And then you can do, you know, basically adding time. So there's an example over here of total time. It is basically adding up all of those hours, all of those cells throughout the week and giving me a time math in there. Well, now you all know how many hours we worked during the first week of tech.
We had a question. Is there any way to add a lunch break into there?
Right, sure. Not within those 2 cells that I'm aware of. Again, there are 56 people out there who know just as much Excel as I do. But what I have done in those situations is just create 2 more rows, right? And then have a clock in, a clock out, a clock in, a clock out. You also, if you didn't know exactly when that lunch was, but you knew that there was an hour missing, first of all, what's a lunch break? But if you knew that there was an hour that was not going to be worked in there, you could work that into the formula, right? Like you could do this time math. Oh, come on. Minus, I think 1 will work. Let's see if it does. Nope, doesn't like that. Because it's time, you might have to be like minus 60, or it might have to be a fraction of an hour now. Yeah, thanks for asking a really complicated question. Basically it's a fraction of a day. It wants a decimal place of a day in there, which is really confusing when you're first starting to work on it. But yes, you can. You just have to know which way you're formatting your time, because if you're formatting as fractions, then it's fractions of a day or decimal points of a day. And if you're formatting it in a different format, then you can do minus 60 or minus an hour. You just have to dig around and figure out which one you're in.
And the person who asked that question has now apologized.
No need to apologize. It's I should apologize. I don't know. But believe me, later tonight, 1 in the morning, I'll be over and go, what are you doing? I'm like trying to figure out the answers to all these questions because they are good questions. So calendar, right? Like you could set up your calendar in Excel. I'll be honest, I still do my calendar for rehearsal in Word. because I don't need to do time math, because I don't need to be able to easily translate it into formulas. This is a special instance where I'm tracking people's hours. Are there computer programmers out there, programs that track people hours? Of course, yes. This is filling a niche version, right? And that's what we do as stage managers, right? We are creating paperwork for niche things. We are tracking weird things, which brings me to really my next point, which is for a Little Mermaid run sheet. I suppose that is data call. Oh yeah, there we go. So like we're tracking, you know, this is a run sheet that from the Little Mermaid that I did 3.5 years ago. But we're tracking weird stuff. For instance, if spinning beach ball of death. There we go. If puppets, you know, we had lots of puppets in that show, and I was constantly tracking like what the preset was for them, but also I needed a sheet that told me what the daily check was. So Sebastian, I don't know why I needed to put parentheses red crab there as if there's someone who didn't know who Sebastian was. But like who has that and what its checkpoints are, right? Its eyes, they pan, its head, it's a swivel, claws, full range articulation. And these things were changing constantly through rehearsal, right? The puppeteer would come in and be like, look what Flounder does now. And then like 10 minutes later, the actor would come be like, Flounder doesn't do this anymore. And it would be like, well, is that for permanent now he doesn't do that anymore? Or like we can fix it, right? So these things were constantly evolving. And this was helpful to be able to add rows really quickly, to be able to change and manipulate how I had this laid out. Could I have done this in Word? Absolutely. But it's part and parcel of my run sheet. So it's just one of my extra tabs here in my run sheet. For Excel beginners, just kind of going back to the basics, every Excel workbook has various worksheets within it, which you can see here on the bottom. So one of my tabs is my run sheet version 5. One of my tabs is my run sheet version 5, only the fly and motor cues. One is my preset list, which I do keep separate from my run sheet. Different schools of thought, no one's right. Everybody has their way of doing it. We have spike and glow, you know, like where the spike and glow check is, so that every day the props department can make sure that we have these particular spike marks, these particular glow marks. Could I have done this in Word? Absolutely. Would I then have 2 or 3 documents open? Yeah, so I like to keep it all here. So that's the kind of thing where you can use multiple sheets. And this is for Erin, because her favorite thing that she asked for. And I didn't do it on this show, but I can easily show you how to do this. There is the ability to, and this is a really fun pro tip, to be able to change things in multiple tabs at the same time. So for instance, and we can't really dive all the way into this without me spending a lot of time formatting, but if I wanted to say make a copy of this particular run sheet, all I need to do, if my computer catches up with me here, it's doing a lot right now. There we go. For me, it's control click. For other people, it's maybe right click. But I can move or copy this particular worksheet. Man, it just does not love me. There we go. You can also, this is also where you can rename the sheet. This is also where you can change the color of the tab. But if you go to move or copy, I can move these sheets around in a different order, basically clicking and dragging it if I want a sheet to be ahead of another sheet. Or I can create a copy, that little checkbox right there. And if I want to, I can move that copy to the end. I don't want to, I want it right next door. So I'm not clicking that, but I can move it to the end. So I can create another copy even in another workbook if I want to, right? This drop down will allow me to put it in any of the gazillion workbooks that I have open, but I wanted to keep it in this workbook. So I'm creating a copy. Okay. And it's going to take a second because it's a lot. There we go. And see, it's renamed the copy the same text and then with 2. So I'm actually going to rename this by, again, right clicking or control clicking or whatever is works for you. I'm going to rename it. and it will select it. And I'm going to call this, I'm just going to call this rail sheet for now. I can also, while I'm in there, I can make it fun colors, things like that. But I'm not going to do that right now. What I am going to do is select both of these worksheets, right? So by, my computer is not loving all the things open. There we go. By holding down Shift and selecting another tab, another worksheet, I now have both of these worksheets selected. And even though I'm still in the one that's green, I'm still in Rail Sheet, not in Run Sheet. I have them both selected. And if I go down to, I don't know, let's pick this one. And I'm changing this time. We start fathoms below now, actually, in the new timing at 4:24. The page numbers are still the same. And it's a new work, that Little Mermaid, you know, and so they're calling it fathoms above. Now I've renamed it. Thank you. Love working on new works. And I've now changed that. So now row 62 is changed in Rail Sheet. And if I go to spinning beach ball of death, and if I go to row 62, it has also changed it here. It's now 4 minutes and 24 seconds and fathoms above. You're like, oh, cool. I can change two sheets at the same time. What on earth is that good for? Well, one of the ways that I do my Rail Sheet is that I will basically copy my Run Sheet and then select my Rail Sheet to just be just the Rail cues. And you can do that a dozen different ways, right? One of the ways that I do that is that I go through and just, as I'm inputting things, if it is a row that I want to be in the Rail Sheet, I just put a little X in this column, right? And then I can filter for that column having an X or not, which is how I created this fly motor sheet, right? Wow, this computer, there we go. So you'll see here on my Run Sheet fly motors, this is just the ones that have X's in either H or I, right? So this has none of the other stuff that the rail and motors departments do not care about. And in fact, it's just visual clutter to them. What they want to know is when theirs are and in what scenes they are and about proximate times. So you can filter for that. That's a way that I have done it in the past. Not the way I always do it, just a way. But if I'm not,
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when you were creating that, did you cut the whole thing over and then deleted all the other lines, or what was literally the physical process to do that?
I can literally show you. If I go to Rail Sheet again, I can select all these columns. And I can go to Tools, nope, sorry, Data Sort. Within Sort, I can then sort by any column. And I want to sort by columns H. And I can do, we can do values or cell color, font, and you can sort by virtually anything. I want to do by values. And I want to do A to Z, right? So if I do that, I basically, once it catches up with me, it basically then has sorted for, is there anything in row H? Then that goes on top, all row H, 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 H. And then when I run out of X's in H, which will be a while, then it puts everything else below it. Now, everything is out of order because I have sorted it differently, but that's how I eventually got to my fly motors queue, was I basically did that. It was a little bit more advanced, and then got rid of everything below that I didn't want on that sheet, right? So you can do it that way, or you can do it another way, which is to hide all of the rows that you don't care about. Sorry, my computer's so slow. So I could be like, oh, I don't want any of these that don't have an X in it. And so I can basically select all those rows and then Control or right click or whatever and hide. Now these still exist. These rows are still there. They just won't print and you won't view them, right? So you could print this. It won't print the hidden cells. And this is the tool that you would use in your next step to be able to change things on multiple sheets. It's a little bit trickier than that, but basically I could then select all the sheets and change something in any cell And if it's a cell that's hidden in my rail sheet, it will still change in there, but it won't affect the sheet. Where it gets troublesome is when you're adding rows. So you want to make sure that if you're adding rows, you're doing it in all of the sheets, right? It will add them in all of the sheets. And then you still have to go in to your rail sheet and hide if it's not one that you want the rail to see, right? So it will add them in all of them, but you still have to do some maintenance, some cleanup, some landscaping, some formatting. I don't know what the right word is. So that's how you can select, oh goodness, what have I done? There we go. That's how you can select multiple sheets and make multiple changes, right? That is probably one of the things that I really loved to do when I was ASMing, was to be able to separate those rail sheets. Some stage management teams prefer that the stage manager is tracking the rail sheet and is making their own rail sheet, that the ASM isn't doing that. This is a way that maybe both can use the same document to create that, so you're not double doing work. Maybe, you know, depends. Each team has their own kind of rhythm and priorities on that. So just a choice that I have done. We do have a limited amount of time, and I do want to go through a couple more things. And these will just be quick examples, I think, of how you can use Excel. So this is a much more complicated character scene breakdown. This is for Secret of My Success. This is Act 2. And so you can track a lot of things in here that, you know, when people say like, oh, I'll do the character scene breakdown maybe in tables or something like that. Ooh, $1 Million Quartet. Cheers to you, Matt McMullen. Is then you can do a lot of color coding. And so we do a lot of color coding here at Paramount for our wardrobe department. So they like to put into our character scene breakdown the kinds of quick changes that we have. Yellow is a certain kind of quick change. Dark blue is a longer kind of quick change. Different locations where those quick changes will be. You can color code, you know, like certain rows or columns to be visually less distracting or easier to read or track across. You can do borders so that when you have a transition, you can have a thicker border, things like that. This is not one that I put together, so I'm not totally familiar with it, but it is pretty similar to what we do. We track a lot of other things in character scene breakdowns, like exits and entrances, those kind of things, which you can easily and quickly then change the width of cells to fit the text that you have. This is maybe a middle level thing, maybe a beginner thing, but there's a couple different ways that you can fit hard to fit text into a cell. And so these are quicker on the Mac versions. They might be a little bit differently located on PC versions, but you can see here that you can wrap text, merge text, combine cells, those kind of things. But where you can find it always is if you right click or control click on a cell and format cells. And in here, in alignment, you have the option to wrap the text. So you have a long bit of text that goes across many, many rows, or columns rather. You can wrap that text and it will then wrap back into the column width that you have and then make your row longer, right? So you can wrap the text, you can merge cells, or you can shrink to fit. So let's find a good example here on something a bit more simple maybe. Yeah, here we go. Here's a good example. This is from forever ago. So this is from the Henry Awards in Denver in 2017. But here I have this bit of text which is running out into my area where it won't be printed. And that's an important piece of information, not available until 2. Actually, that's in a different cell, isn't it? Yep, that's in my notes. That's a terrible example. Let's try here. Where's that one? Oh yeah, here we go. This is the example I was looking for, of course, where it's running off into other columns and into the unprintable area. So I can control click or right click or whatever, format cells, and I can say wrap that text. And it formatted it so that it wraps it, stays within the column width that I have. And even when I change that column width, it's adjusting the text to still stay within that columm width. Now you'll notice
the request for you to zoom in a little bit more.
Oh, zoom in, yes, yes. There we go. Yeah, so it can wrap that text. Now you notice you can't see all the text right now, and you can do a couple different things. You can drag this over here when I'm on the side. I can drag this and make it longer to fit all the text. And, oh, it's not gonna do it for me. I think this is an older format. It's a newer format. You can just click like over here where the 11 is, and it will auto format to the right size so that all of your text goes in there. There is a limit.
Sometimes for me, it's double click too on the bottom.
Yeah, I was trying that. I think it's because it's an old version. It's like from 3 years ago. But yeah, double click. Yeah. Oh, there, it finally did it. Weird. I think my computer is just tired of having all of these windows open. So yeah, double click there on the cell and it will format it. There is a limit to how much text you can view. This will only go to so many pixels long before it's like, nope, I've had it. You please use more cells. And so there is a limit to that. The other thing that you can do is if you, let's say I didn't want to do any of that. I could say, oh, now it's going to get all funky. I could say, actually, I don't want to take up more vertical space. I want these cells to merge. And so you can, come on, computer, hang with me. Oh my goodness. It is thinking hard. There we go. I can say I want you to merge the cells, and it will merge those 3 cells into one cell, but you'll notice I still have a little more than what will fit on the page. So you might have to do a combination of merge cells. Here's the tricky thing with merge cells, right? Now it's recognizing all of this as one cell, but if I start wanting to say, take this particular row and move it somewhere else, cut it from there, it's going to be like, oh no, wait, I can't do that. That's a merged cell. I'm going across lots of different columns here. So just be aware of how you're going to manipulate your document in the future, where you might want to change columns or rows out for columns and rows if you're doing things like that. So kind of the character scene breakdown here can get pretty complicated, as complicated as you want it to be by using formatting, which is one of my favorite things about Excel, is quickly being able to format. There's 100 different ways to do, borders here. You can even draw your own borders. You can custom borders. You can change the line style, the line color. You can draw in a grid, thick borders, all sorts of different things to help make your information more readable, which is, for me, again, probably the biggest reason why I use Excel. It's something that I can do to make my documents more readable. At least that's what I think. I think other people might look at my documents and be like, what does that even do? There's 100 different ways that you can do calendars as well. This is a format of a calendar that we use for season planning. So you can see our upcoming season here. So I'm basically laying out week by week. You can see, well, I'll zoom in. Yes, yes.
Thank you.
You can see week by week here that, let's see, get back over here. Yeah.
Oh,
so
I see that you've frozen the column.
Yeah, I'm getting to that in just a minute. That's why I pulled this one up. Excellent deduction. So you can see here that, week by week, I'm showing what's going on with Secret of My Success, Kinky Boots, Rock of Ages. We're in creative team meetings, and basically can scroll all the way across. But because this is such a complicated, big document, I want to be able to reference these dates quickly. So I want to be able to say like, oh, first production meeting for Groundhog Day. When is that? And so you'll notice that I've frozen these columns. There's a couple different ways to do that. This is a good trick here, which is, it's buried under there, which is under view for me. It's under different places for different people, where you can put choose a couple different things, right? You can freeze panes, which allows you to be able to freeze and stay on certain information in various panes. I frankly don't find that one as useful as either freezing the first column or freezing the first row, or what I really prefer is split screen. So we'll remove the split here that I already had in there, and then I can show you how to use this. So, going back to my example, trying to find something on Groundhog Day. Okay, first production meeting, oh God, what show is that in? What data? This has no context now for me. So by going to split screen, you notice that these little thicker bars came in, and I can move those kind of to wherever. So really what I want to not scroll with me all the time, oh, come on, computer, you can do it, is a certain number of rows. It's going to, I'm going to do this in a slightly different place so that it's easier for us. I have a lot of hidden cells in here. You notice I jumped from 1 to 55. That's because that's last season, and I don't want to see last season anymore. But I'll unhide those so that we can do these example better.
I think you hit hide instead of unhide.
Yeah, of course I did. Thanks.
But I didn't say it.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm helping Megan out there.
Oh boy. Come on. Unhide. There we go. So I can do split screen up here, and then I can move this to wherever I want it to be. So I just want to be able to see row 1 wherever I scroll. So you notice I'm scrolling, and I can still see row 1. I can still see what show we're in. And then I can move this other bar over here to after column D. And now—
So you're dragging right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually I'm just scrolling.
But to move the bar.
Yes. When I'm moving the gray bars, I'm dragging, correct. And so I can scroll wherever, and those two will track along with me. In frozen panes, they wouldn't track with me. They would just stay where they were frozen, which is great if you're trying to grab numbers from over here and move them to over there, and they're really far away. But for me, for most of my purposes, I want to be able to track that information with me as I go and still be able to reference it. Oh, Groundhog Day, first production meeting, Groundhog Day. First production meeting, sometime between July 13th and August 2nd, right? So freezing panes and mostly split screen is really an important kind of feature when you have a larger document like this. This is not a document I have ever intend to print. This would, I mean, like on a piece of paper, it would be ridiculously small, or I would need to use a plotter. But this is a document that we use often when we're looking at various options for where shows go, how deadlines interact with, across a week. We're looking at how, I don't know, preliminary scenic and costumes for Hand to God happens during performance work 3 of Cinderella and strike for Streetcar. Good, that's when we want those due because our TDs are available to work on stuff. They're not in tech, basically. So that's another quick example. And then I've just got one more before we go to, actually maybe just 3 very, very quick ones. I use Excel a lot to make maps. So for instance, this is a map of our tech table layout. I could, yes, absolutely, like take an aerial shot from the balcony or get the architectural drawings or things like that. But I don't really care about the picture of what it is. I really just want something that our sound department who sets up the tech tables can quickly reference. And so I can just draw in using some colors and some text. Here's where the stage is. Draw in using some colors and some text. Like here's where the keyboard is. And then I can color code things. This is the kind of table that is up through Wednesday of Tech. This is the kind of tech table that is up through previews. This is the kind of tech table that is always present, because if you put the soundboard away, we don't have a show. Things like that. And so I use this because it's quick and easy to color code. And I can even put in like the rows of the seats in the auditorium so that they know that this skinny table for directing goes over row T. That might even be harder to see on a picture. They might have to start counting rows, right? Things can be more complicated than this. Here's, on this particular thing, the thing I wanted to show was that there's 3 different ways to view Excel documents. So like right now you see this big page 1 stuck in the middle here. This is print view, so I can see how it's gonna print, or page break view actually. And these blue lines over here show me what I'm printing. So I can move page break view if I don't care about that half of the room. I just want to focus in on these guys. I can move that page break so that the printable area becomes a different place. I can also, sometimes you'll see a dotted line in there. Well, it will say page 2 or page 1. I can move that dotted line to, let's see if I can make one. Yeah, here we go. So like page 2 is here. Well, what if I want that to be a part of page 1? I can drag that line and now make it all page 1. So instead of going into print, selecting to print to 1 page by 1 page, I can do it in this one as well, right? It's just another way to do that. Or if I want to insert a page break, can I drag from here? Can't remember. It's been a while since I've done that. But I can insert, yeah, insert page break. And it wants to break it right there. That's where it naturally wants to do, but I don't want it to do that because that's a weird place for me to print a second page. I can do 2 pages, that's fine. I'll do the front of the house as one and the back of the house as the other. So I can insert that page break, and here I can move it around cell to cell. So if you're one of those people that in your run sheet, you want the next page to start with a new number and not have the musical number split over the bottom of the page and top of the page, instead of going in and adding rows, or instead of going in and adding a bunch of returns that you're going to get out later, you can go into page break view and basically move that page break around so you can get that extra line in there or up there. And it will tell you if you go too far, right? Like it'll be like, oh, no, that's another page, dude. Change your margins. Although you have to go a really long ways on this document because I haven't zoomed in so far, I guess. Yeah, so right there, it'll be like, hey, you said you wanted this to be page 2, but dotted line, you're going to be on a 3rd page here, right? I don't really talk like this all the time. Let's see here. And one last quick thing. Oh, so other kinds of maps, backstage parking maps, you know, you can do anything where you're like merging cells to create what backstage parking might be by the stage door. One last thing, and this kind of goes to like reports. Someone was like, hey, I want to do my reports in Excel. I never have done my reports in Excel. I know a lot of people who do though. I do my reports in Word, but I do my daily schedules in Excel. But here's an example of a piece of paperwork that could be easily adapted to be able to do your reports in Excel. And this is basically just a thing that we use in production management. This is our front of house information sheet, I believe. And so like we basically have, you know, a thing here where we're like setup location and tables and that kind of thing. I would say that the pro tip, if you're doing it in Excel and you're like, you want this to be your scenery box, and you're just going to adjust the size of your row to fit how much ever information you want in there. The pro tip here is like, how do I create another line? And I bet there are some people out there like me that were like, oh, to go to the next line, I hold down the space bar for as long as I need to, right? I was young, I was innocent, I didn't know. There are ways. On Mac, it's Option Return. I don't remember what it is on a non-Mac.
Alt.
Great, thank you. So Option Return gets you down to the next line, and you can just keep skipping lines and then
within the same cell, rather than skipping to the next cell.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's how you do that. I still to this day find Excel spreadsheets from my youth many, many years ago where I will open them up, and because of how they're formatting, there'll be all of these like 15, 20 spaces stuck in there because I was so young and innocent. It's a simple Option or Alt Return, get you to the next line. That's the pro tip.
And another pro tip you wanted to do you want to do about auto population? We talked about that real quickly.
Oh, yeah. I even had a thing pulled up to show that. Yeah, so here we go, autofill. This was when I thought I was gonna have an example of each that I was gonna create while we were doing it, and I was like, that's dumb. So there's a lot of different ways to auto-populate. Thank you for reminding of this. And it's as simple as, I want this row to be numbers 1 through, I don't know, 50. I can just type 1 in that row, hit enter, type 2 in that cell, rather, hit enter, select both of these cells, and then grab this little square down here at the bottom and drag it until this little number here gets to 50. And it will auto-populate 1 through 50. It will not only do that with numbers in a sequence, it will do that as displayed here in numbers in, like you can do every other one. Oh, and you don't have to do 3 of them, but I did 3 of them. But you select that pattern and then grab that little box and drag it down. and it will go as far as you want it to go. Same thing with dates. If you start with 324, you got to do it right though. Don't do it like me. 324, 325, and then you show it that pattern, it will auto-populate as far as you drag that row. It'll do it in rows, it'll do it in columns, and it will do it with time. The formatting on time here is important. If you do that, it will not know what it is because that's not formatted properly. So the lower P doesn't mean anything to it. But if you do space and the larger P, and then you can even do it in, well, you have to format it right, Jonathan, just like you told all these 57 people. You got to do it in, like you can do it in 15-minute increments. Select that pattern and go down, and it will do every 15 minutes. So if you're looking to do auto-population of time, you can do it that way as well.
And you can also just do a single, like if you just wanted everyone to say enter stage left, you just put enter stage left and then you just drag it for however many of those people enter stage left without doing calculations.
Yeah, it doesn't have to do a pattern. It can just basically copy paste it.
Yep. Someone else is saying you can also do math totals. Oops, lots of people are typing and all of a sudden my little chat went away. You can also do math totals, add one column and then grab that cell it shows and drag it across. So if you've got several columns that you're lining up with a total at the bottom, then you just drag the bottom total sum formula and you can drag it across.
I can't wait till later tonight, go back and watch this, not with the sound on because I would hate that. But basically to read all of these comments because I love learning new things as well. I meant to say this at the beginning. I'm hoping that even though this format is so weird and one-sided that I get to learn things as well. So I love that you put little pro tips in there. Please keep adding your little pro tips. I want to get better and someday maybe be able to achieve what I've put on paper as a Microsoft Excel genius. There's so many other things in Excel, like so many other things, right? Like there's pivot tables, there's using sort and filter even more. There's so many cool whiz bang little things out there, and you can totally get lost, you know, for 6, 8, 10 hours down rabbit holes of YouTube videos on Excel things. They're so fun. They're great to do. And you can, and this is my last disclaimer before I'm done, I promise, you can go too far. Like with anything in stage management, and I truly believe this, like you can hone the tools, but know when the tool is most applicable and know when it's important to make that certain document uber formatted and gorgeous and pretty, and when it just needs to be an information carrier and will do the job for right now to get the things communicated so that people can be safe, so that things can be on time, so that things can be purposeful. And then you can go back and clean it up later if you want to. But don't get lost in the formatting for the sake of the important stuff, which is the information. And that's the thing that I can and have recently, and probably sometime in the next 2 weeks of shelter in place will do. And I'll be right there for you. I would love to learn all of your Excel tips and tricks. So feel free to reach out and tell me all of your cool things and we can geek out about it as well.
I had a request that came through. Can you just make up a column, you know, like you done these other, a column of numbers, and then you show them how to do the sum at the bottom, and then make up another column and then just show them literally how to drag across the sum that we were just talking about?
Oh, sure. So like if I have this row of numbers right here and I want to do a sum, for me, it's this little epsilon somewhere.
Top.
So strange.
I see auto sum over on the top left. Right. There's the dog.
She thinks that people on bicycles are wizards. So she just told us a wizard went by. Oh, there it is, auto sum. It was hidden behind this, this thing.
Oh, gotcha.
So you can auto sum and it will kind of guess. It'll be like, hey, I think you mean all these numbers, but you may not mean all those numbers. So you can take this box and move it and be like, no, I just wanted these numbers, right? And then hit enter and it will total up those numbers. If you want to make sure that you got the right numbers, you can double click on that cell and it'll be like, did you mean these numbers? And you'll be like, oh, actually I wanted that one as well, right? So you can real quick add up numbers that way, or you can just type in this formula equals the sum of and then select what you want. So if you've got equals sum of open parentheses and you're like, I want these numbers, and I just basically drag and click those, and then I can be like, and also this number, oh, nope, sorry, hold on. Also, sorry, this number, and I'm doing that on Mac by holding down Command and selecting, and I can select multiple ones. It's Control on PC, is that right?
I'm not sure, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's Control. And so you can select those numbers and just add up those numbers. You can learn these formulas, you know, like B7 colon B12 means all of those in that row. Comma means skip everything else until you get to this one. So you can learn those formulas and do sums that way. And then this is also a fun little thing. If you're just like, I never want to know this except for right now, what do all these numbers add up to? If you select them all and you go and you look in your bottom right-hand corner, you'll see sum 694. You'll even get weird things like counts and averages. So you can kind of quickly add them up just to make sure that those equal what you thought they would equal. I have a fun thing on some personal budgets that I have where I like the number at the bottom to equal what the budget was. And when it does, I use conditional formatting to make it green and like flash, which is really a happy thing. And then when it's more than what the budget was, it turns red. So you can use formulas and conditional formatting to bring yourself joy or sorrow when you've gone over budget.
And then if you wanted to just to copy that sum for the one that's in 30, yeah, to the 259, you just drag your thing over and it could make sums across the rest of your, yeah. If it fit, which obviously we're not doing the same kind of apples and oranges here, but yeah. Right.
So basically what we just did was say, hey, keep adding, add all of these things. Same thing you did in this column, but I want you to do it here as well. And so it's selecting those. Now it's kind of gross because that's all dates, but it's doing these as well. So
and if you look at the top, it's changing from A7 to B7 to D7. Right. It's changing with the column.
Yeah. And I guess that's a fun pro tip as well, is if you didn't want that to change, you can add dollar signs. And so if I always wanted to add B7, no matter what column we're in, I add a dollar sign before the B and a dollar sign before the 7. And then when I copy and paste that into here, didn't like that, but it's dollar signs is what it is. Why did it not like that?
Because you only changed one of them from the column and the rest were still the new column. I think you needed more dollar signs for all of them, maybe.
It shouldn't not like that. Oh no, there it is. Yeah, so when I'm in this column, it's saying, hey, I'm still adding B7, but I'm changing all the other ones to D. I'm modifying the formula to fit the column that I'm in. Except for this first one, I'm gonna go look at B7.
One of our people says, yes, it is control in non-Mac.
Great, non-Mac.
I was stuck trying to come up with a word.
It's a PC term.
Would it be B7 and then D8? Basically, it's going to be adding so our columns are letters. So it's going to, unless you have that dollar sign, it's going to assume that if it was in the same column before, then you're going to make it in the same column again. So
I think I see what they're saying. They're saying, in order to be apples to apples, I also need to do the D one, and then that makes the, well, it will, if I get this right. Yeah, so this is now adding still the B section plus these numbers in D, right? Because I had chosen more than just a cell. You're right, absolutely.
I don't know if we have an easy way for you to show this. Can you describe how to track scene and act times in Excel?
Oh, yeah, like time math to be able to add them up. I have done that before. I don't think I have access to one of those easily, but it is just the same theory, right? Like being able to say, put in this column that Act 1 was, oh, you're gonna get me on time stuff, like was 16 minutes and 30 seconds, and that scene 2 was 8 minutes and 30 seconds, and can see it was 7 minutes and 30 seconds. So you can, I might have to change some formatting here, but I can auto sum those. Yes, I'm gonna have to change formatting to get to what I want. But it's the same theory. It's just format cells, number, time, and this is where you're gonna have to go in and do like your mod stuff. I don't think I'll just be able to quickly come up with that. But if you're formatting in, I wish I had that Cyrano. I did this for Cyrano de Bergerac in my time, scene times. And you just have to get your formula right at the end and make sure that all your cells are properly formatted to be in time, first of all, and then all in the same kind of time. And then you can do your time addition. And I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to YouTube that one. Believe me, I will be as well. And I'll be embarrassed that I didn't know this off the top of my head. But you'll have to go in and basically tell it, hey, I'm adding time here. And that's using the mod formula. Whoever just put that comment up that I can't see probably knows how to do this, and I'm just blanking. But it's possible, and I have done it before because that's a nice, quick, easy way to both within your your scene timing sheets to see how consistent you are if you're putting in individual scenes, but also just even in your report to be able to put in Act 1, intermission, Act 2, and have it add all together. I've done that before as well, and I don't have an example of that.
I've not done that.
Yeah, but it's possible and easy.
I do have a question that maybe you know, because like when I'm doing a run sheet, I will put in that it was 30 seconds into the act, 45 seconds, and I hit a certain part, and then all of a sudden it wants to flip it into the daytime. Do you know what's the best formatting condition of format, pick this type of a time period that would be best for dealing with seconds and stuff like that we do on a run sheet? I seem like I always forget until I get over 12 minutes, and then it wants to turn it into, instead of 13 minutes, it wants to turn it into an hour.
Right here where I've got 23 minutes and 7 seconds, right? So
if you went to 52, it'd be like, no, that's a different day sometimes.
Yeah, I just change it to text. If I'm not using it to add, like if there was a cell at the very bottom where I was adding in all these times, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to add because they're cumulative. But if I was adding in all those times, then I would still keep it as hour, but I just change it to text, and then I don't have to deal with all of that.
That's what I usually end up doing.
Oh yeah, Megan is saying maybe she's done this on Drowning Girls.
I did it on Newsies, but I'm mad I lost the run sheet. I don't know what happened. Oh, I do this.
Oh yeah, so she's doing this, and this is formatted as,
I think these are times.
Custom time.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, and that's where, to the previous person's question, I know that's where you need to go to be able to do custom times, but you can do hours, minutes, and seconds then as custom times. Look at all those comments.
Can you track time by actually time rather than in minutes as second tries, or do you have to track in minutes? I don't think I understand that question. Did you understand that question?
Yeah, so like you're saying, like the show started at 7:05 and 43 seconds, and we went to intermission at 8:21 and 41 seconds. Can you add and delete that time to get the time? Yes, is the answer to that. Yep. And it's similar to, where is that? Oh, this, right? So it's similar to this example that I used earlier, where I'm putting in 11 a.m. and 12:30 a.m. and I'm getting that it's 13 and a half hours, right? And this is just hour and minute. But if you go to, so like right now, I have this as time as 1:30 p.m. You can also do it as hours, minutes, and seconds of the day. And you can do it in military time, yeah, or I don't know, civilian time, I guess is that. Either one. So yes is the answer to that. It's just then tracking that, making sure you're formatting in the right way, and then tracking that formula so that it does add it up a couple of times. There's this weird document that I have, which is a tech time calculator, which I can input in the number of pages that are in the script, the number of dead pages, you know, those weird pages that only have one line on them, or that they've intentionally left blank. And then I can put in the number of pages that I think we should be complete by the end of which block of rehearsal. So by the end of Thursday afternoon, I think we should be through 9 pages. I'll make this bigger, sorry everyone. And this is a prime example of, you know, how I was finding the workable minutes in a day by doing basically this time math, right? So I'm going 2 to 2:30, and it is formulating that that's 30 minutes. It's the same thing that you're talking about. I'm just using hours and minutes. So I'm inputting 4 o'clock to 4:55 is our 55-minute before the next 5-minute break. And I'm having it add in that time, and then it's adding up that time. So it's taking the sum of these hours and minutes and making it 6 hours and 10 minutes, which then I have to convert into minutes for my formula. So you'll see here, this weird formula gets me to that. So I'm taking the sum of D13 through 19, right here, D13 through 19, that's Thursday afternoon, and I'm taking it times 24 times 60. And that's how I'm getting hours and minutes into just minutes, which then helps me with my formula to know at what pace we're doing, minutes per page, page per minute, pages remaining. It's never good when the tech time calculator goes to red. That means we're really behind. It means I have to go have conversations with people. So like this tech time calculator taught me a lot about time, but my takeaway for you is that you have to go back and double check and trial and error. I had a version of this that unfortunately we used for a whole show that was wrong. And I had to go back and double check. And so when you're doing things like this, input a whole bunch of fake information that you know you can add and you know you can double check to make sure that your formulas are right.
Great. We do have a pro tip that I had forgotten about. You can add an apostrophe in front of a cell entry if you want it to be recognized as just text. Because I've had it do the opposite to me, where all of a sudden I put an apostrophe that I didn't mean for it to do that, and yes.
Right, so like if do you have to do the equal sign, or is it just apostrophe? I can't remember now.
Try it.
Yeah, just an apostrophe. Yep, so recognize just as text. Good pro tip. Love pro tips.
Jonathan, I am not going to expect you to do it right now. We did have a request, if you're up to it, to put in some of your favorite formulas into a list, like the today one that people didn't know, but maybe if you have some of the easier ones that you use a lot, maybe you can put us together a list. Sure. I'm sure that would be a lot. Yeah, there's been a couple questions that we missed about, like, could you do it with time? We hit most of the questions. There were a couple that by the time we got to them, it wouldn't make sense to go back and get to them. I will say that this definitely will be recorded, and it will be, assuming Zoom works for us, it's under a lot of stress these days, but as soon as I get the recording, it should be available for the Stage Managers Association members to get in the gallery. We're picking and choosing which things are public right now on our website for those that aren't members. If you happen to not be a member, every Friday we're changing up the content. We have a new public only page. So at some point it may become one of those. If you are an SMA member, as soon as I can get it edited, it will be in the video galleries of the website. But there are other things available. We encourage you to check that out. Thursday, we have a members only discussion coming up on adapting your resume to non-theater jobs, in case that is of concern to people these days. And I'm checking to see what the last comment was. We've got lots of thank yous, Jonathan. Thank you so much for doing this. We could have spent forever doing this, and of course everybody knows different tips and tricks.
I did want to point out one fun quick thing with Excel. Sure. Which is easy to forget. This is an example of what we do at Paramount for a tech table tent. So everybody's tech table, they know where their table is. So you can do quick and dirty stuff that, like in Illustrator, you could make even more gorgeous. But it's easy then to basically copy and paste from another Excel thing that you've already made into another Excel thing you've already made. So this schedule here in the middle is already somewhere else. I've already created it for another thing. So I can pop it in here, do some quick little side text. But the takeaway here is that don't forget about headers and footers, right? There's headers and footers in these documents as well. And so you can add in things in headers and footers. I thought there was a header and footer in this one for some reason, and there's not. But there's supposed to be, because it's supposed to say at the bottom, tech table, table tents. And But there's other things like if you're doing your rev date or your, show name or whatever, and you're doing, it doesn't show up in print page in that one, or in like when you go to page layout, it will. So we never really went back to the 3 different views here of down here, but page layout.
It's right down there.
Oh yeah, there it is. I knew it was, yeah, table tense. So that's how you can see if you've forgotten to update your other things. I'm sorry, I just couldn't leave that thread hanging.
Well, and I like, because a lot of times you do miss your header and footer because you can't see it. And I liked your other one where you showed how to keep it updated to today if that's what you want to do as a cell, because invariably somebody will print it or not. You do have to watch, like you said, there are some times where you don't want it to automatically update.
Right.
So, but yes, thank you so much, Jonathan.
No problem. My pleasure.
And we'll be available whenever we, I'm sure Jonathan can answer some more of your questions if you have some sidebars. And I will put a thing, certainly, maybe we'll start it on the discussion group for this event so that both members and non-members can see it. But if you have your own tip, we can add it to the bottom of the Facebook in the discussion about this event, if anybody has other tips they want to add or questions they want to ask. So thank you so much, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Good seeing you all. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.